I want to bring you tonight's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. We're seeing our tax dollars, the billions of dollars allotted for the infrastructure law, start to go to work now. One of the biggest investments in America's roads in decades, right? But some of that money is going to fix the unjust way the original interstate highway system was built back in the 50s, often, and sometimes purposefully, barreling right through black neighborhoods. So this Black History Month, the city of Indianapolis is trying to pave a new path forward for the black community. Maura Barrett explores how the federal government might have their work cut out for them.
The South Side was a family. If you did without, hey, somebody was going to know it. If something was going on, hey, we came together. You don't have that today.
Beatrice Miller is referring to life before construction tore through her neighborhood in Indianapolis to build the I-65 highway in the 1950s and 60s.
It was hard. It was very, very hard. You have to blend in with a new group of people that knew nothing about your existence.
Her story echoes those of black communities across the country back then, when more than 475,000 households were displaced in favor of adding 41,000 miles to the U.S. interstate system. Many of those properties home to black families.
The majority of these ones on here, workers, went to work every day.
An automotive age, traveling on time-saving superhighways.
Fast forward to Indianapolis in 2022. That highway under construction again. The city working to rebuild higher, but with input from residents this time, starting with a section called the North Split.
Basically, what we're doing is tearing everything down to the ground and rebuilding it back up again. We did a very extensive public involvement process with, this construction.
We toured some of the construction zone to see how that community feedback shaped the elevated design.
We're going to have a portion of what we call an urban forest.
And more space to benefit pedestrians.
Here you can really see the difference between the old and the new.
We're able to put a lot more overhead lights. We're also doubling the size of the sidewalk underneath.
This opportunity for infrastructure improvement is something Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg has put a renewed focus on with his Reconnecting Communities initiative.
There is racism physically built into some of our highways.
$1 billion in grant money in Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law to right the wrongs of the past. The North Split construction is not funded by this grant, but organizations like Rethink 6570 formed to make sure the city focuses on more than just rebuilding as is for the next part of the project, the South Split. Here, they want to see a recessed highway.
If you can imagine, this was all neighborhood. People don't really want to live around this.
Instead of it being elevated like it is now, you want it to be recessed underneath what would be a neighborhood.
From an environmental standpoint, the air emissions can be better, noise can be better, and so people are more inclined to develop closer to it.
Rethink 6570 funded a study that says it's possible, but Indiana's Department of Transportation is focused elsewhere.
This was not that project. This was, it needed to be done. It needed to be completely redone from the ground up. But we're talking about millions and millions of dollars of difference.
But is a recessed highway or something similar to that a potential for the South Split?
So for the South Split, it's not even on our radar right now.
A project that requires years of foresight. But even with the administration's goals, residents like Miller who were displaced are still skeptical.
If we hadn't been looked over for so long, I probably would think, oh, yeah, this is good. But I won't believe it unless it happens.
Maura Barrett is joining us now for this. So, Maura, this is super interesting, right? I reported on something very similar, a similar project in Detroit last year, and it was clear, some of the people who are involved, really important stakeholders here, can be skeptical a little bit. They might have different ideas of what does success look like on this front. Talk to me about bringing together a lot of different stakeholders on a project like this.
Yeah, Hallie, that community input is really key here, and in some cases we've seen it work. In Indianapolis, for example, there was an exit ramp proposed for that North Split construction that would have dumped out right in front of a historically black high school, and the neighbors there were not happy about it, and they adjusted those construction plans, and so that's not happening anymore. And so these conversations are really key as they do map out this progress. But like we mentioned in this piece, the recessed highway that would do that effort of reconnecting this black neighborhood that had been torn apart isn't being being considered. And when I pressed INDOT on that, the Department of Transportation in Indiana, they said that looking ahead towards the opportunity of funding, the conversation is just too far down the road to really make a firm decision on that right now. And to put it into perspective, initially when the government, when this bill was proposed, they allocated $20 billion in funding for this Reconnecting Communities Fund. And now it's just $1 billion that will be distributed across the country. And so coming together, this is really going to have to be a national and local partnership in funding, which means cities like Indianapolis are going to have to buy in to see any real progress. And that's why we're seeing that skepticism from some of those black neighborhoods.
Maura Barrett, thank you very much for that reporting. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.